Hi, I hope you're alright out there. So I was going to look at UFO today. Obviously, recently we lost Paul Chapman, sadly, so it seems like a good time to have a trawl through the UFO albums. Um, okay, so basically the history of the band is you basically go back to 1969, I think. Andy Parker, Pete Way and Phil Mogg come together, and guitarist Mick Bolton. Now, they get a deal fairly early on with Decca Records, and they make UFO 1, UFO 2, Space Rock Flying, I think is the subtitle of that. And they also do a live album, Space Metal, and they get quite popular in Japan and Germany. I don't have these albums, I've listened to bits and bobs online. They're interesting from historical purposes, but there just isn't really anything there that would suggest this will become a great rock band. Although, like, the rhythm section's tight and Phil Mogg, you can hear the qualities in his voice. I think the key factor is they haven't found a sound yet, and Mick Bolton, I don't know what happened to Mick Bolton after he left UFO, but his guitar playing just doesn't have the quality that the band needs and the songwriting quality to lift it. So basically what happens is Mick Bolton leaves, and then they have Bernie Marsden briefly in as of Whitesnake fame. They're touring Germany in 1973, well, they've got a date, and Bernie Marsden can't make it. There's some kind of hold up with his passport, something like that. And they're supporting a band called the Scorpions, and they ask the Scorpions, look, can your guitarist stand in for us for this gig? Basically, a lot of the songs are a bit jammy, I guess. They sit backstage with the guitarist. He learns a set to the best of his ability as we move forward a bit, and the rest is history. Why is that? Because that guitarist is Michael Schenker. So lucky for UFO, they're supporting a band with someone who's going to become one of the most important guitarists of the 1970s, and for some people, one of the greatest players of all time, certainly for me. So basically, Michael Schenker decides to jump ship from the Scorpions. I guess it's more Rudolph's band. And the other thing is UFO at that point are bigger than the Scorpions. Obviously, history will show the Scorpions will become one of the biggest hard rock bands of all time. Something that UFO will never quite do. We'll sort of come to that. So basically, they do an early single track of Give It the Gun with Michael. That's great if you can find that. It's got a really cool solo. And then they make their debut album. I think it comes out early or mid 74. And with him, and that's phenomenon. So in some ways, this feels like a first album. After those early albums, it feels like the band's rebooted. That often happens. A band keeps the same name, but it doesn't feel like the same band. So what's this album's like? I think for years it was kind of seen as like, yeah, it's decent sort of first album with Schenker. But I think it's a classic now, really. I think what's great about this album is it's got the two core tracks on it, Doctor Doctor and Rock Bottom. And I was watching some the other day, actually, someone talking about UFO, and Doctor Dot was a track I don't need to hear ever again. I like it. It gets wheeled out as like UFO's best track, and it's their Paranoid, like Black Sabbath. What Paranoid is to Black Sabbath, Doctor Doctor is to UFO. There's infinitely better tracks that both bands did. It's got Rock Bottom on here. Now this studio version of it I think is far superior to the live version. The live version usually lasts 10-15 minutes. Michael Schenker goes off on one. On this, he structures one of the great guitar solos of its day. 2-minute, mega solo. Comes in, breaks down, uses something called the Dorian motor. It's got a little bit of a jazzy feel. It's quite a jazzy backing with some nice sort of seventh feel. Certainly when I play it live on the keyboards. And then he just builds up, and then he brings out his trademark licks. He brings out his fast, precise pentatonic licks and what I call energised blues licks. So basically, Michael Schenker's guitar style is he takes the classic licks, Clapton, Page, Hendrix, that those guys were doing, or in this case, his biggest influence, Leslie West. If you listen to Leslie West of Mountain, you can hear a lot of phrases that come out in Schenker's playing. Leslie West also a big influence on Randy Rhoads. So anyway, what Michael Schenker does, he makes these licks, he makes them more precise, he makes the timing more precise. He plays them faster, he plays them with better hammer-ons, pull-offs, more technique. And he kind of invents how metal guitar's going to go into the late 70s and hard rock guitar and into the early 80s until Van Halen comes along. But I think Van Halen's influence doesn't sort of find its way into British soloing as much in the early 80s or mid 80s. Obviously it does so in America. But anyway, yeah, the guy's just 18 when he cuts his solo, going on 19. Actually, I think by the time the album comes out, it'll be 19, but he maybe recorded it when he's 18, I'm not sure. But it's great. So the rest of the album, it opens with Oh My, which is a really good rocker. Lovely playing on this. Then the next track, Crystal Light, is a really nice acoustic number. So what's coming in out on this album is a lot of their Zeppelin influence, and it's got that light and shade thing they'll do well, but it's a little more folksy, the acoustic numbers on this album, and I really like that. Crystal Light's great. Track 4, Space Child, that's another really cool one. You know, again, it's acoustic. It's got this Dorian mode for the musos out there, the slightly jazzy scale on Schenker's soloing. Really like it. That was side 1 anyway. Side 1 finished with Rock Bottom. Side 2 opens with Too Young to Know, which is a kind of poppy rock track. Again, that's something the band would explore through the years. Then Time on My Hands, another acoustic track that I love. Lovely little chord change on that with a lovely little Schenker solo. Then they do something interesting. They do a cover of Willie Dixon's Built for Comfort. I think Willie Dixon's a blues guy. And again, they do it really well. Years later, Phil Mogg would go in a more bluesy direction with later UFO releases with Vinnie Moore. And, you can hear that influence here. Mogg's got a great voice. He doesn't hit the high tenor notes of people like Dio or, those Gillan, those types of singers. He's more like Coverdale or Paul Rodgers or early Coverdale, where he's in that middle and high mid range. And it's a lovely place to be. And Schenker plays some great blues licks, as he doesn't fall into the standard traps that other players do on this type of number, so it's really good. Then you've got a lovely little instrumental called Lipstick Traces with Schenker. It's again, this is something he will do with that throughout his career. Have a typical cleaned pick part, maybe acoustic. It's a lovely soloing. And then it finishes with Queen of the Deep, which is quite progressive. It's got a little bit of a proggy sort of feel. Got a really cool riff, and a great rolling solo again by Schenker. If you get the remaster like this, it's got Give Her the Gun on this, which was a German non-LP Chrysalis single A-side. Yeah, and that goes to late 73. Solid 8 out of 10 or more, really. It's a really good record. So the next one, now, I'll put that over there. So the next one they do, and this really starts to build the kingdom. Got a fantastic Hypnosis cover, this is Fawcett, look at that. Just tap madness. So 5 tracks off this album will become live staples. When you go and see UFO, they will play, at least 3 of these tracks, sometimes all of them, which can get a little bit frustrating when you want deeper cuts, but you got Let It Roll, Shoot Shoot, open the album. Side 1 finish with Out in the Street. And then you had side 2 opens with Mother Mary, and the album finished with This Kids. And those 5 tracks, they play a lot. I think they're all on the Strangers in the Night live set. This Kids also features a track called Between the Walls. Again, it's a picked light piece, Schenker melodically soloing. They're all great tracks. They're all-time classics. I should say that the first 3 albums are produced by Leo Lyons, the bass player from 10 Years After. And each one's getting better sound, and this has got more bottom end, it's got more throat to it. They're bringing in keyboards on this album. I'm not sure who does the keyboards on this. And obviously on a track that Out in the Streets, that it really benefits. So what the other cuts like, High Flyer, track 3 I love. Again, it's a lovely acoustic number, would fit on the Phenomenon album. Next one, Love, Lost Love, I'm not as into. And then side 2 had Too Much of Nothing. Again, I'm not really into those tracks. And then Dance Your Life Away is a pretty cool rocker. It's got a great Schenker solo. He plays on his neck pickup with a really thick tone. And he kind of predates, again, that thing that guitarists will pick up on, like John Norum, Key Marcello, Malmsteen, players like that, going to that neck up for that really thick solo sound with a fat vibrato. So I don't think this album's as consistent as Phenomenon. I think Phenomenon's a really consistent album, but what it's got those really classic tracks. So again, it's a solid 8 out of 10. It's a really top UFO album. So this next album gets overlooked a little bit. 1976 is No Heavy Petting. And I think there's just a couple of reasons, really. It didn't do as well in the States. It wasn't promoted properly. But the opening 2 tracks are what they play live a lot. The other ones that used to play live kind of got moved aside. I think this is their best album of the 3 Leo Lines ones. The double tracking on Schenker's guitar's tighter, it sounds fatter, it's got a really good sound. They bring Danny Peyronol from the Heavy Metal Kids in on keyboards. Now that opens up the sound, but I think that the problem is that the songs feel they've got to have keyboards on every track, whereas later down the line, which we'll come to, they realised they didn't need to do that. But Natural Thing and I'm a Loser, the 2 tracks I play live a lot. Natural Thing often opens the set, so they're great. Track 3's Can You Roller, that's an up-tempo rocker with a really cool, love that. Then there's a really good ballad, Belladonna. This type of ballad, they're starting to evolve the ballad style, and this type of ballad will really find fruition on the next 2 albums. And then it finishes side 1 with Reasons Love, which has got a great riff. A lot of Schenker's riffing gets overlooked, but he's got a nice Jimmy Page style of rhythm work, the single note Jimmy Page types of riffs. You can really hear those coming through on these early albums. That's a great track. Then side 2 with Highway Lady, that's got a nice piano part. Got a phenomenal Schenker solo on this. He just lets rip on it. Then probably one of their deep cut classics, track 7 on with the Action. So they used to play this live. It's a great track. Again, it brings in Phil Mogg's lyrical style where he writes about the urban experience, and he does that really well. Writes about like kind of gang life, street life, what it's like to be in the big city. Again, Michael Schenker pulls off a zinger of a solo as a phenomenal lick in the middle of his solo, where again he's taking this energized pentatonic lick thing that he does, and then A Fool in Love, which is a really nice rocker, and then it finishes off with another great deep cut. Again, it's a plaintive ballad, acoustic piano ballad that builds up epically, called Martian Landscape. Love the lyrics on this, and the end, it fades off with a beautiful Schenker melody on guitar. So, it hasn't got the kind of live classics, this album, but I think it's the most consistent album. It's got the sounds really coming together, and it's got deep cuts I love. So that's sort of become my 3rd favourite UFO album. So basically what happens is the album hasn't done as well. They've had some traction with the Force album in the States. In the UK, they're a well-respected touring act, but the market's more in Europe and Japan. So the Rattle Company at this point, there's that push. We've got some faith in UFO. How do we get them over the top more? And what they do is team them up with producer Ron Neverson. So up till this point, I think Ron Neverson's engineered albums like Led Zeppelin and other bands. I'm not sure what his production credentials are before this, but basically they produce one of the great hard rock albums of all time, 1977's Lights Out. Another great Hypnosis cover. And key thing with this is Danny Peyronol is given the boot, and they bring in Paul Raymond. There he is, the late great Paul Raymond from Savoy Brown. So what Paul Raymond brings in is a twin skill. He's a really good pianist, keyboard player, uses lovely Fender Rhodes sound, but he can also play a mean rhythm guitar. And that means when they're playing live, he can strap on the guitar when there's no keyboards, and it means they don't have to have keyboards in every track. Okay, so the first thing out the back of this album is just got 8 tracks on it. So up until now, every album's had 10, 9 or 10, 9 tracks, It's just lean, it's mean. It opens with one of their all-time great tracks, Too Hot to Handle, just a great rocker. Phil Mogg, the whole band on great form, Schenker, brilliant. Then the second track is one of their all-time deep cuts. I think it's one of their unsung classics, Just Another Suicide. Again, what comes in here on this track is Ron Neverson's ability to bring in string sections and to get someone to do the arrangements for those. And the strings on this just sound really good. Schenker plays 2 godlike guitar solos. Phil Mogg's lyrics are great. And I suppose you could argue they're kind of bringing in, I suppose, I don't know, not like, I just want to say kind of Elton John, but I don't know, they're bringing in that 70s singer-songwriterness into the track, but in a band format. It's just got an extra sheen to it. Brilliant track. Then, before I mentioned how the ballads were starting to develop in style, and then the track 3's Try Me, one of the all-time great ballads they did. You know, it's really, really plaintive, and Phil Mogg's lyrics and his vocal performance, he kind of pours his heart out on it. It's brilliant. And Michael produces he produces a phenomenal solo. Basically, it just goes down quiet in the middle, and then the solo progresses to the end. I don't know how much they played this track live. Maybe they couldn't pull it off because the string arrangement's amazing. Then side one finished with one of their great tracks, Lights Out. A lot of people probably heard this. You know, this is an example. This is much better than Doctor Doctor. It's better than Rock Bottom, you know. This is the track on Planet Rock where you're like, this is great. So basically they take the gallop from Achilles' Last Stand, and this will be very influential in the progression of hard rock and metal. Obviously UFO is one of Steve Harris's favourite bands, and the galloping rhythm of Lights Out has probably influenced him a lot. So yeah, it's a great track. Again, the lyrics are talking about urban life. Basically, there's a power cut and people have hit the streets as rioting, and just Phil Mogg just does this so well. There's some great lyrics on this. And the guy's just class. I know I bore people. Basically, Schenker just pulls out a couple of zingers. His middle solo's great. He does like a phenomenal lick. I'm sorry to be bored in groups of four. He uses the minor scale Dorian mode blues scale. You know, he's mixing stuff up. It's brilliant. And then his outro solo's got some of my favourite Schenker outro soloing ever. Then side two opens with the first two tracks are the filler cuts on this album, but the good track five's Getting Ready. Just a nice rocker, kind of like some of the tracks on the No Heavy Petting. And then they do a cover of Love's Alone Again, or really good. Really suits Phil's Mogg's vocal style, and there's a lovely orchestral arrangement on it as well. And then track seven's great deep cut. I actually saw them play this live back in 1998 at the City Hall in Newcastle. So they bought this one out of the bag, Electric Phase, really good, great riff, slow, dirty riff. So one thing I should mention about Schenker, he plays great slide guitar parts, so often, again, he doesn't do kind of bluesy slide, he's like Richie Blackmore. He will play like beautiful melodies, sometimes he'll harmonise them, and this has got some really cool stuff like that on. Then the album finishes with its mega cut, one of the great epic all-time ballads in rock history, Love to Love. I think this is Steve Harris's favourite song of Iron Maiden. Just brilliant. Opens with a brilliant Schenker guitar part that I think he came up with later, and then Ron Neverson put it into the mix. Brilliant orchestrations, beautiful timing at the start, got some odd time signature, a little bit proggy. Phil Mogg does his wondering, minstrel guy thing really well, plaintive vocal. Pete Way's bass is brilliant, that intro, boom boom, drumming's great. Paul Raymond's guitar, brilliant sort of Fender Rhodes keyboard part, and then just to finish it off, Michael, tears everyone a new one again. Absolutely brilliant, 9 out of 10 plus, one of my favourite albums of all time. So this makes number 23 on the American charts. I think it's only 54 in the UK, but they're starting to pick up. They've started to become a pretty popular touring act in parts of America at this time. For instance, they can play Chicago 2 nights and sell it out, 14,000 each night. I'm surprised this album's never been declared gold or above in America. But we'll come to why things didn't work out for UFO, going the wrong way. So how do they top that? Okay, so do they top it? Well, I think they nearly do. A lot of people think this is their best album, and I wouldn't disagree. 1978's Obsession. For most people, it's either this or Lights Out. Why break up the dream team? They stick with Ron Neverson. Only difference here is they're getting more popular in the States. They go out to America and they record in a disused postal warehouse. So the drum sound on this is huge. So they get a great Bonham drum sound for Andy Parker. That's brought to the fore on track 2, Pack It Up and Go, which opens with a pounding beat. So I think with this album, again, there's not as many cuts to play live off this. Basically, when they did the Strangers in the Night album, which I'll come to, they were kind of still on the Lights Out tour, segueing into this. So when we see them live these days, they'll play Only You Can Rock Me, sometimes Cherry. I have seen them play one more for the rodeo, which is track 10. You know, the tracks on Lights Out are kind of wheeled out more, but there's great tracks on this. So you got Only You Can Rock Me, it's a classic. Apparently I heard the other day that Michael Schenker just improvised the solo in one take. Christ. Then you got Pack It Up and Go, then a little instrumental Schenker does Arbery Hill with a recorder, an acoustic guitar. He actually reworked this track for a song called Tales of Mystery on his debut album, Michael Schenker Group. Then Ain't No Baby, that's a great rocker, great dirty riff. Really sleazy rhythm. Interesting, the reason it's called Ain't No Baby is the group, indigestion. The group, the Babies, were on Chrysalis Records as well, and the record label were going, oh, you should sound more like the Babies, and Phil Mogg was like, we're not fucking doing that. So Ain't No Baby is a reference to that. Then you got a brilliant ballad, Looking Out for Number One, brilliant violins, again, you know, orchestral arrangement, epic. Then side two with one of the all-time great rockers, Hot and Ready. So this used to get played live. It might be my favourite Michael Schenker solo ever on this, or certainly with UFO. He just is an absolute face melter in the middle. Just peels off like his licks. Just, it's so good. Great rocker. Then Cherry. Again, I mean, this track gets played live a lot. I've never been as keen on this. It's a Pete Way written track, but it's really good. But I've just never been as fussed with that. And then You Don't Fool Me. Sometimes they crank this out on Planet Rock. Great deep cut. Brilliant Schenker solo. Then Looking Out for Number One reprise, little instrumental. And then it finishes with two great tracks. One for More for the Rodeo that I mentioned before. Again, that brilliant sort of Americana lyric from Phil Mogg. And Born to Lose, kind of in the vein of Try Me, another plaintive ballad, but with a slightly different vibe. So again, it's a solid 9 out of 10 or more. It's a toss-up between that and Lights Out. I think I just prefer the more direct nature of Lights Out, but it's a brilliant record. And then, basically, to come to the end of the Schenker era, they do the Lights Out double live album. Now, this is ranked as one of the greatest live albums of all time, and I'm going to say something a bit strange. I've never totally been into this. Basically, when I was a kid, we had the UFO studio albums. My brother, I think I got Lights Out for like £2.99. From Preston somewhere back in the day. My middle brother had the other UFO albums. But we never had this, so we just loved the studio versions. I love the Schenker solos on those. So I was never as into this. This version of it actually has Hot and Ready and Cherry added at the start, which were in the live set at the time. But the vinyl version of this opened with Let It Roll. So the original vinyl pressing of this was only 64 minutes long on two sides. So a lot of people will probably find this weird listening to this version, but it kind of has the 1, 2, you got Only You Can Rock Me as well. So it's got the 3 Obsession tracks on it. Originally it didn't have that. You've got Let It Roll, Out in the Streets, This Kid's Mother Mary, and Shoot Shoot. So it's got those 5 Fawcett tracks that I mentioned before that are staples. Then you got Lights Out, Too Hot to Handle, and Love to Love from the Lights Out record. And then you've got Natural Thing and I'm a Loser from the Petting album. So you can see that thing where the Fawcett album is very weighted on this album. Dr. Doctor, Rock Bottom off the first album. So quite a strange mix. It kind of doesn't have as much tracks on off the best 2 albums. But it is a great document. They were one of the all-time great live bands at the time. So what went wrong? They're playing Chicago, 14,000 people. They're building up. Michael Schenker basically went AWOL. I think the first time he did it was in 1977. And they brought Paul Chapman in to cover it. So I don't know how many gigs that was for, but imagine you're buying a ticket in 1977 to see UFO and you're like, right, I'm going to see UFO. They've got me, the great band, and they've got my favourite guitar player in. And you turn up and Paul Chapman's there. Now, Paul Chapman's a good guitar player. He was a very good guitar player. But the difference is he's a very good guitar player, and Michael Schenker's one of the greatest players ever. I would argue Michael Schenker was irreplaceable at this point. There was not a guitarist who could come in and do that job. You know, Van Halen hasn't arrived yet, and Van Halen wouldn't be right for UFO. Uli John Roth, you know, again, he's kind of more Hendrixy. He's just not quite right. It's not like, say, with Ozzy, where Randy Rhoads, fantastic player, but you can get Brad Gillis and you can get Jakey Lee. Certainly say Jakey Lee, they can do a great version of those solos and do their own thing. Guitar hadn't developed as much at the moment, where you've got more of that thing you need. You know, Schenker was one of those one-off players. So I think that would have hurt them a bit. The Obsession album didn't chart as high as Lights Out. And that maybe the thing with Schenker affected that. Schenker came back. He toured the Obsession album, and then they recorded this, and then sometime in 78, mid-78, he leaves finally again, I think. It's a bit confused, and then Paul Chapman takes over and finishes off things. So by the time this comes out, Schenker's gone. And I think that, you know, that affects things for them, certainly in the States. I think they suffer from probably mismanagement and their lifestyle. I mean, lots of bands had bad lifestyles at that time, but UFO had a really bad lifestyle. And Paul Chapman coming in, like, will sort of exacerbate that, because he's got a nickname, Tonka Chapman, because he's indestructible. And he'll find a happy bedfellow with Pete Way and Phil Morgan, the drinking and the drugging stakes. So at this point, you know, things probably aren't always as organised as they should be in the camp, but they're starting to get more popular in Britain, and they do the No Place to Run album, which is still actually wrapped. I've just got this. I used to have it before. Now I'm not keen on this. It's produced by George Martin, and I think, you know, again, in the States this will have affected things. The quality of the songs isn't there as much, and the production just lets it down. Basically, George Martin of Beatles fame is brilliant. They're not a great fit. Basically, it's too kind of light and polished in the wrong way. I think Phil Moggs' vocals a little flat sometimes on this. They went out to Montserrat to record this. A lot of people like Letting Go and Mystery Train. I'm not really fussed with those tracks. There's an instrumental opens it, and then there's those two tracks. I mean, this Fire Burns Tonight and Youngblood are really good, and No Place to Run. And then it finishes with Any Day. I really like those four tracks. But it wasn't the album they needed to make, probably. But interestingly enough, it makes, I think, number 11 in the UK, so the new album's starting, and UFO are going to be a big part of, you know, the bands that are around at that point. So they start to get more success in the UK and become a bigger touring act. Then they do this album. This is comes out January 81. This is Paul Chapman's second album with the band, and this is the classic of the Paul Chapman era. I think this stands really well with the five sort of classic Schenker albums it did, Wilder, Willie and the Innocent. So again, the good thing about this is you've just got 8 tracks on it. It's lean and mean. The band produced themselves on this, and very well. It's got a really big open drum sound. The guitars are raw and gritty. And they bring in, at this point, Paul Raymond's left. He goes to Michael Schenker's group. So they're bringing Neil Carter on saxophone and keyboards, who's later of Gary Moore's band. And they do a really good job. There's Chains opens it up. That's a really good rocker. Long Gone, that's a real classic, that. Title track's good. Side one finished with It's Killing Me. You know, that's another really good tune. Side 2 of the album's ripping. You've got Making Moves, great live track. I think they played that recently with Vinnie Moore. Lonely Heart, that was on Top of the Pops, that was a single. Track 7 was one of my introductions to the band, Couldn't Get It Right. This came out as a double single. Some people don't like this track, but I love it. Love Couldn't Get It Right. And then it finishes with one of their great ballads, Profession of Violence. And this features Paul Chapman's greatest solo. You know, he does a great outro solo on this. And you can feel the chemistry with the band. It's got really good orchestrations on it as well. So this is a really, really good record. It's a real solid 8.5, 9 out of 10. And the band, although it doesn't chart as high, you know, they're playing the Reading Festival. You know, they're doing big shows, and they're an upper middle level act. So after this, 1982, they did the Mechanics album. That's the highest charting album in the UK. It makes number 8. It goes silver. It's. I haven't got a has got When It's Time to Rock on it. There's Let It Rain. We Belong to the Night. I think. It's okay. I think it's probably better than No Place to Run. The reason I've got No Place to Run is this OCD thing. Is I've got those albums in an order. And then they did Making Contact. By this point, I think Pete Way leaves. I think Gary Lyons produced that, or did he produce Mechanics? I'm not sure, don't quote me on that. Again, Making Contact's not as good as Mechanics. And things kind of grind to a halt for them. They've got management issues. They haven't run the business of UFO right, I guess. And they, UFO ceased to be. And it's a shame they kind of nearly get to the pinnacle. I think, like I say, what needed to happen is Schenker needed to stay in the Lights Out era, do all those dates, build on the obsession, and then make the right album in 1980, and then maybe start to go platinum. But it wasn't to be. So that's the end of like the proper era, classic era of the band. And Fillmore comes back in 85 with the Misdemeanor album. Then there's another mini album, and there's a big long gap, and then they come back in 92 with Pete Way. He teams up with Pete Way and forget who's on drums. I think it's Clive Edwards and Lawrence Archer on guitar. Lawrence Archer's a great player, and he does a great job of the Schenker solos and getting that vibe. And then obviously it's bound to happen, isn't it? They reform for an album in 95, Walk on Water, with a classic lineup, and bring Rob Neverson back as producer. All this is much more low level. They're on an indie label. They do some reformation shows in Japan. This is a good record. It's not classic, but it's got basically got 8 tracks on it, and then 2 reworkings of Doctor Doctor and Lights Out. But a Self-Made Man, Venus, and Push to the Limit's a great track. Those first 3 tracks were really, really good. Then you got Stopped by a Bullet, Darker Days, Running on Empty, Knock Knock, Dreaming of Summer. They're all really good tracks. So it's a good sort of decent comeback album. I didn't get it at the time. It was only released in Japan. I didn't even know it was out, if I'm honest. There just wasn't the kind of media there about it. But then they do some dates, but then it kind of falls apart with Schenker again. They get back with Schenker in 98. They do some dates. I saw them on that tour. That absolutely mega. Sadly, Andy Parker wasn't on drums. It was Simon Wright, who was great. So it wasn't quite the classic lineup. And then they do a couple of other albums with Michael Schenker, Covenant and Sharks, and things fall apart. There was a terrible show at Newcastle City Hall and Manchester, and was very shenanigans backstage with Spike of the Choir Boys. Schenker goes, and then they bring in Vinnie Moore. And this brings